And I'm delighted to be joined this week by someone who, to me, is a brilliant, brilliant drummer and a man that I've seen live and a man that I really enjoy speaking to. Albert Bouchard from Blue Oyster Cult.
Thank you, Paul.
So we're going to kick it off with one of these, and we're not I have to say this, it's not in order, it's not a one to five. We're not going to do them in chronological order either. So we're just going to mix them up and see where we go. So what we're going to do, we're going to start with a track from the Secret Treaties album. And this is one of my favorite Blue Oyster Cult songs as well. So I'm glad to see that it made your list. I'm talking, of course, about Astronomy. So why is this one of your five favorites, Albert?
Well, let's go back to the beginning. In the beginning, it was Imagineers. Before Sandy had ever written a song, before we were really a group, we were just hanging out with John Wiesenthal and Andy Winters and trying to come up with something. And he had this idea for this series of songs, about this character called Imaginos. So Astronomy was one of those songs, like Blue Oyster Cult, which was, he had written the lyrics to Blue Oyster Cult before we were Blue Oyster Cult.
Yeah.
Sandy just kept writing songs about Imaginos all the time. So Astronomy was one of those songs with Subhuman, were both on Secret Treaties, and they were both Imaginos songs. So, but Eric took out the reference to Imaginos, and, he took out a lot of the words, to make it more easy to remember, I guess, and so Joe did the same thing with Astronomy, and Sandy didn't like it. He's like, you took out half the story here. This is not, the whole thing in the middle about, the Four Winds Bar and all that. So we recorded that. He'd written it for Tyranny of Mutation. We didn't do it. So it was sitting there. It's like a riff of that, it's one of these songs. It was unfinished, but everybody liked the da 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 da. That whole, was very sweet and cool, and it was like a different direction for us. And so I remember I had separated from my wife, and I was living with Eric Bloom in his house, and he was dating this girl in Manhattan that he ended up marrying, but so he would go to Manhattan and stay overnight at her house. So I spent a lot of time in Eric's house by myself, and we had a practice room there. So I was in the practice room playing the Wurlitzer piano, and so I wrote this little riff, and I thought, oh, this would work in Joe's song. So then I got out the lyrics and I started playing Joe's song, and then I put this in it, and I was like, oh, that's good. Where does it go now? Oh, it should go to a fast section, So then I made a fast section, figured out how to put all the lyrics in there. 4 doors at the Four Winds Bar.
Yep.
Okay. And so then we practiced it, and we were, and I was going to sing it. Everybody tried to sing. Joe tried to sing it. Eric tried to sing it. Sandy said, Albert sounds best on this. He's written most of the song, so he should sing it. So we recorded the song at Columbia 30th Street Studio, and the day came for me to sing it. I sang Dominance and Submission first.
Mm-hmm.
And when I finished that vocal, I couldn't sing. I tried to sing Astronomy, and my voice was shot, because I'd done that, I'd really given it everything for Dominance and Submission. And of course it fit better with my feeling at the time. Was like, screw you, Susie. So Eric sang it. But Eric had never really practiced it. He'd only given a shot to it once. So he screwed up the lyrics, which we didn't even realize until later, because they were so happy that they got a vocal that was viable on this track, because we didn't have much time. We had to go back out on the road soon. So, and this was towards the end of the recording session. So we only had a couple days left. And so Eric sang it, but he sang the wrong words. He sang Four Winds at the Four Winds Bar. which actually, if you think about it, doesn't make any sense. It should have been four doors at the windows, Four Winds Bar. One door locked, windows
Yep.
barred, other let you in, and then the other one's the same. So it's, Metallica did the wrong, every version has the wrong lyrics except for my version. The Reimaginos version, I sang it the way Sandy wanted. So,
Fascinating stuff. I love hearing the backstories to these songs and the fact that the song, as you said, it goes from that kind of almost eerie, quiet, tinkling beginning to what is a really, really raucous ending as well. I mean, it
yeah.
just encompasses everything of that time, doesn't it? It's just a great song. And just touching on the Metallica version, obviously they were absolutely huge at the time they did their cover version. What did you make of their version of him?
I absolutely loved it. I loved the harmony that James came up with. It was great, and I mean, at first I was like, oh, it's just like us. Why did I really wanted to see if they could make it totally heavy, and but no, it was very respectful, and I mean, and I was extremely grateful that they put it on their record. It was wonderful. Of course, I already had a relationship with them because I had done. I was writing for Modern Drummer, so I did a feature on Lars for the magazine, which is the first time that he ever got his name on a drum magazine. So he was quite happy about that, and then I became I haven't really seen him in several decades because of just. I mean, I don't know. I suppose I could reach out a little bit more. I kind of would like to see him, and his dad, I think his dad's like the same age as me, so yeah.
Well, there you go. Fingers crossed you do. Right,
Yeah.
let's move on to track number two, and this is something from the Spectres album, the fifth album from Blue Oyster Cult. Again, the closing track again. So tell us about Nosferatu.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's one that I mean, Spectres in general is a fantastic record. I mean, I think it has so many. It never caught on like Agents of Fortune or Fire of Unknown Origin, but it is really the songs are just as good, I believe. So Nosferatu was a song that Helen Wheels wrote the lyrics to because she was a big silent movie fan, and she thought, "Oh, this will fit in," because we did Tattoo Vampire, which was her on Agents, so she wanted to do another vampire song, and she gave it to me, and I was kind of in a different place at that time. So Joe saw it and said, "Oh, I can do this," and he wrote this I think amazing piece of music. It's a lot of fun to play, and it sounds great. It has this very wistful. It just gets you, and when you hear it on the record. So you know, so I chose that as another song that I think is worthy of more love. More love. But, in Blue Coop, well, I don't know that we ever recorded it. We played it live a lot, and it always came out great, with Tish and Snooky singing the backgrounds, the goodbye.
Wonderful. And in terms of the fact that you said there, Joe was the singer. I mean, on Spectres, I think four of you were lead singers, and you spoke before about on Astronomy you were meant to do it, and it ended up being Eric. Obviously, Donald
Yeah.
sang, and
Oh, yeah.
everyone sang. So, how important was it to the band to have that many different singers, and the flexibility it allowed you within the songwriting and song creating?
Well, I think that we grew up in the era of the Beach Boys and the Beatles, and those bands all had multiple lead singers. I mean, the Beach Boys had one guy that sang most of the stuff, but actually they all Al Jardine and Brian Wilson, even Dennis sang. Even the drummer sang some lead vocals on stuff, just like the Beatles. With Ringo singing. Basically a song every album based. So it was really cool for me to see another drummer that sang. So yeah, I wanted to do that, and Alan, was not really a singer, but eventually he started becoming more of a singer. Because you just hang out with people that sing, and you want to join in. It's fun. Singing is fun.
It is
you know.
indeed. It is indeed. Right, let's move on to track 3 then, and this is another great song. Veteran of the Psychic Wars from 1981. Tell us about this one then, Albert.
Okay, so this was a song that another song that Eric had written with Michael Moorcock, and I remember buying a comic book about Elric, Elric comic book, which was illustrated by some Japanese artist. I have it somewhere in my collection over here, but and Eric was really excited about it. He's like, "Oh, this is Michael Moorcock. He's so good," So then, when we were doing Mirrors, he submitted this song to Eric called "The Great Sun Jester," and it was a blast to play. I loved it. It's one of my favorite cuts from that particular record, which is my least favorite record. Well, of the records that I played on, so there's one record, I'm not even going to go into it, that they made after I wasn't in the band, and it's not that great. But anyway, so that one, I heard it, and at the time, I was fascinated with the Peter Gabriel record, the one with the melting face cover.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's called Peter Gabriel.
Yeah.
Another one that's called Peter Gabriel. So, they had the song Intruder. And I thought, I love that sound, the
Yep.
I don't remember exactly how it went, but it was like basically a tom-tom riff. And I thought, oh, this should sound sort of military. It should have a military beat, because Eric had just done it. There was no drums on it, so my mind was free to imagine. So I came up with that drum part, and then when it goes into the chorus, which is "Don't Let These Shakes Go On," I had an idea for a riff that was like an odd time signature riff, just to make it a little more, plus adding triplets in there, quarter note triplets, so it was like a whole thing, and I used a military style drum beat in there, and came up with a da-da-da, 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 dum, dum. So, I showed that to Eric, and he was like, "Oh my God, yeah, this is going to be great." And everything, when we recorded it, everything came out perfectly. Eric sang the hell out of it. To this day, I believe it's Eric's best vocal. I really, he really connected emotionally with the tune. And Donald's lead in there is like unbelievably great, unbelievable. It still gets me to this day. So yeah, I love that song.
Fantastic. And like you said, the drums itself is rhythmic, it is marching, it is pounding. That beat runs throughout it. How much fun is it to play something like that rather than your regular kind of 4/4, 8/4, whatever it is?
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. A lot of fun. You know, do something different, or it's not even that different, but it is. And I didn't want it to sound like "We Will Rock You" either. That was the danger. It's like, okay, well, we're going to put it, and it also will. It didn't really fit with the lyrics, that kind of thing. So I just, I keep going back to the rhythm of the vocal, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I can hear this rhythm right here, supporting the vocal. So yeah.
Definitely different. And it was an interesting placing on the record itself as well, because Burning for You was a big hit, and it followed that on the record, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, I had by then developed a technique for sequencing a record. And my technique was taking the beginning of every record, every song, and the ending of every song, and putting together every possible combination, which would be about 40, 50 combinations, and finding out what combinations were absolutely the best, what combinations worked with the songs that were still left over, so there were certain things, and that just sounded really great to me to put. That was one of the, right away stuck out as like, oh, this is a good this is a great combination here. This is going to make a powerful thing, and people want to listen to the whole record.
Yeah, absolutely. And those pounding drums really do make that song, Veteran of the Psychic Wars. Fantastic choice for number 3. Number 4, then. This is another song which you said deserves a bit more love. We're going back to the Tyranny and Mutation album, one of the early ones. I think it's the band's second album. Again, the closing track. That's interesting. 3 of the 4 songs you've picked so far have been closing tracks on albums, which is interesting. The one I'm talking about, of course, is Mistress of the Salmon Salt, Quicklime Girl. So why this one?
I had written a song called Checkout Girl because Alan Lanier, this is before Patty, had gone, he was going out with this girl, Virginia Casada, who was she was the checkout girl at Dan's Supermarket in Great Neck. And which is no long now. What's there is like this, really ritzy, exotic, health food store, that everything is like super expensive. But at the time, Dan's was like just a humble supermarket, and but we would buy groceries there, and she would just like, then And so we'd pay a bill that was like we weren't paying for half the stuff. She was giving us stuff for free because we needed food. And I know that I remember going back and saying, oh, there's this girl there, and she gave me food for free. I mean, I paid, I had $10 and I got all this other food, and so and I told her, and she's really pretty and blah, blah, blah. So Alan Lanier started going out with her, and so I wrote a song about her because I thought she was just really cool, and it just made me happy every time I would see her. So anyway, Sandy said, that song, I got a better idea. How about Quicklime Girl instead of Checkout Girl? And of course, and then it turned it like a mass murderer or a serial killer. And I'm like, okay, I guess I better put this in a minor key now.
It's a good start.
Yeah, I put it in a minor key, and I'm like, oh, wow, this sounds pretty cool. And then we recorded it, and there was all these holes, and I filled the holes with drum fills and stuff. And after it was done, I was like, wow, this is really great. It's a really great song. It's very powerful, and I re-recorded it on Imaginos 2, Bombs Over Germany, and it's quite pleasant. I mean, it's still fun to play. And on the Bombs Over Germany, I used the live ending that we used to use. Okay. Yeah. Where it just keep going, toes that crawl, knees that jerk, next like swans that seem to turn, like a chant at the end. So, but the album version is really wonderful. It's really, it's kind of relaxed but spooky. And
yeah. And it's an interesting song as well, because just looking online, there's so many different theories behind it, whether it's about love or sex and groupies, or, as you said, a murderer, or whether it's just about someone that buries dead bodies and use it as fertilizer in the ground. So is it a mix of all of those?
Yeah. It doesn't really get specific about how she disposes of the sailors. But how she kills them, but they end up dead, and she uses them for fertilizer. Yeah, which is also, that's the whole thing. You put quicklime in the grave, and the body decomposes faster, which is not really true, but it was the theory at the time. If you're ever going to dispose of a body, do not do that. Check out Breaking Bad if you want.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that moves us on to track number 5, and it probably doesn't come as much surprise to many people, because it is probably the standout hit for the band, and it obviously holds a special place in your heart. We're obviously talking about Don't Fear the Reaper.
Yeah. So, and we talked about this before on your show, but and I don't remember exactly what I said, but I will try not to repeat myself.
Don't you worry.
But basically, my knowledge of the song came right at the very beginning when Donald had just written the riff, the guitar riff, and he called me up and said, "Al, I just wrote this great riff. You want to hear it?" I said, "Sure, sure, play it." So he actually he had an electric guitar. He put the phone on the guitar, and I could hear the vibrations of the thing, and I'm like, "Oh, that is a really good riff," and then we said, this is going to be a great record. We've got, we are making demos on our multi-track, 4-track machines, and really able to get a little bit more into kind of harmony that we wanted and all this stuff, because a lot of times it was trial and error, in the practice. So we figured that we'd be more efficient. We brought in a more complete thing. So we were talking about that, and I remember I played him something in mine, which I can't remember. It was a song, and maybe it's just, I can't remember it today, but it was a song that did not make the record. That's all I know. And he said, "Oh, that's great. This is going to be a great record, So he said, "I'm going to make a demo." And, we were about to fly to the Northwest. We were playing a series of shows in Seattle and Portland and I think Medford or someplace like that, Pacific Northwest. So we were that weekend. So when, I got picked up, I met him at the airport because I was living in Manhattan. He was living out on Long Island. So I met him at the airport. He said, here's the cassette, and I had a little Sony Walkman. So I put the cassette in and listened, and I'm like, "Whoa, this is going to be a hit." And I said, "Don, I think you just wrote a hit." He's like, "Well, no, I don't know. I don't even know if it's right for the group. It's too mushy. So I said, "Oh, no, we have to do this. We have to do it. It'll blow people's minds." He said, "I don't know. You think it's any good?" I'm like, if I know anything at all about music, this is going to be a hit.
Absolutely. And you mentioned a few times you thought it was going to be a hit. It was going to be a hit. It sounded like a hit, everything like that. How did that change things for the band then at the time when it came out and it was a hit?
It changed our lives in many positive ways, going from just barely, hand to mouth kind of, even after, having success with On Your Feet and On Your Knees. Nobody had a new car. After that, I had 2 cars and I owned a house. So enabled us to become adults. I think as a group, it was maybe not so great because all of a sudden people were like, instead it was more about the individual and not about the group. Because in the beginning, nobody cared who wrote what, and there was no money in publishing. So you weren't trying to push to get your song on it. It was like whatever's the best song. After that, it became this kind of tug of war, who's going to get their song on the record, which I think ultimately is not the greatest way to run a band. Even in the beginning, when I was writing most of the songs, I was like, we should just split all the money equally, just like the Doors do. Put everybody's name on the thing because we're all in this boat together. We all suffer equally. Nobody's suffering more than anybody else. So, we should be rewarded equally. That's but that's me. I'm a progressive, liberal, it's all about equity. So, yeah.
Indeed. Well, Albert, it's been a pleasure chatting with you all this time and hearing your 5 favorite songs as a quick run through Astronomy, Nosferatu, Veteran of the Psychic Wars, Quicklime Girl, and of course, Don't Fear the Reaper. 5 fantastic choices. Albert, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Paul. It's my pleasure.